This didn't work with me the whole time. I was just pressing and it didn't go. But it is my pleasure now to introduce, all right, our next speaker. I'm going to just do that real quickly. Our next speaker for this morning is Mr. Mike Krause. Mike is the Executive Director of the Tennessee Higher Education Commission and Student Assistance Cooperation. Mike has led the Tennessee Reconnect initiative since his inception several years ago. Mike previously served on the staff of Governor Bill Haslam as the founding director of the Tennessee Promise, the nation's very first tuition-free college program. At the same time, he also served as a senior advisor to the governor on higher education. Before joining the governor's administration, Mike led several initiatives at the THEC, Kentucky Higher Education Association. Prior to that, Mike served for 8 years in the United States Army and Tennessee Army National Guard, where he completed 3 combat tours and was awarded the Bronze Star Medal during Operation Iraq Freedom. Mike has earned his master's degree in public policy from Vanderbilt University. He is a Woodrow Wilson Higher Education Policy Fellow and the recipient of the 2019 Southern Regional Education Board's Trailblazers Award. One of the themes in this summit is promises, specifically to adults who want to participate more fully in the economic and social opportunities that are opening up in the 21st century to those who have invested in expanding their education, knowledge, and skills. Mike has, as you have heard, a wealth of knowledge and experience in promises kept. How Tennessee reconnects adults to higher education. We do that in Kentucky too. So please help me at this time welcome to the podium Mike Krause. My pleasure.
Kind introduction.
Yes. I want to also take a minute or a second to let you know we have 2 Mike Krause in the room. One of them works for me at KCTCS, and I want him to stand as well because he's dying to meet the other Mike Krause.
Good.
So Mike Krause to Mike.
There we go. That is super weird. And I've never been at a conference with another Mike Krause, but I think it's awesome. So thank you guys for the chance to be here today. There's a 0% chance of me standing behind this podium, so I'll be roving about. And what I'd like to do over the next few minutes is walk you all through a little bit of our Tennessee story. We've had a pretty remarkable pace of change the last few years, and would be remiss not to thank a few people. First and foremost, the person that's really led this work is Jessica Gibson. And yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, Jessica is actually a native of this Commonwealth, and she has a non-compete contract with us, so please know that. I want to thank CPE, Kentucky. I remember early in my graduate school days when you learned about higher education policy, you learned about Senate Bill 1 from Kentucky, which many of you are familiar with. Kentucky has this awesome legacy, and Dr. Thompson and Lee are such great friends and colleagues. So thank you guys for having me here. And then finally, Lumina, you all are going to hear from Danette later on today, but if you guys look back to when a lot of this adult flywheel started spinning, it's when Lumina really started broaching the conversation that now I think seems commonplace to us. Like, of course, we're talking about adult learners, but those of you that have been in this business for a while know it was really novel, like 10 years ago, to be talking about adult students. Want to start with this quiz. So those of you that are on campuses right now, if you answer yes to these questions, 1, if you have a semester that begins only every 16 weeks, if you rely on a student to self-identify for advising, and if you have office hours only available on weekdays, congratulations, you are serving Skippy, this guy. He's from the 1940s. He does not exist anymore. And yet, all of our campuses are still built for this guy, correct? And in order to change our campuses to be about a different type of student, the reality of our adult students, we have to do things really drastically. So Miss Burnett over on the left is one of our Tennessee Reconnect students, working mother, had a dream to go become a pharmacy technician. Last year we made her an offer she couldn't refuse, which is we're going to send you to school for free using Tennessee Reconnect. And she'll be a pharmacy technician in about 6 months. In the middle is Lori Ward. Lori is going to be, I think, an excellent drug and alcohol rehabilitation counselor, and yet again use Tennessee Reconnect to help her get that credential. And then on the right, we talk a lot about veterans. I will tell you, few things are as jarring as going from the structured environment of the military to the decidedly unstructured environment of higher education. And veterans can experience a little bit of a difficult transition. I want to be clear though, because that under that gear is me before I became an adult learner. Veterans are not damaged. And the culture we're building in higher education is dangerous right now because higher education doesn't understand veterans. I get it. And so the natural reaction is to say, I don't know. I had a Tennessee president tell me 6 months ago, she really wanted to serve veterans, but those mental health issues. 1, highly offensive. 2, not true. And 3, our data is clear. When veterans hit campuses with a few front-end transitions, and we absolutely need some of the front-end transitions, they will be the most successful students. And in fact, in Tennessee, adult learners who are veterans are succeeding at 150% of the rate of our most elite Hope Lottery Scholarship traditional students. So that concludes the veteran soapbox, but it's a... There's a narrative there we need to fight. The realization of why we are trying to serve adult learners in Tennessee is a human one. And there's good reasons to do this if you're chasing an attainment goal. And I'm for that. I'm all about attainment goals. But at its core, the reason we need to be pursuing adult learners is a moral reason, which is telling an adult learner, who doesn't have a college degree, that their life is now going to be defined by strictures because they don't have a college credential is not acceptable. Why? Because a living wage requires a college credential. This is not ambiguous. The jury is not still out. The jury is in. And here's our data. This is real-time data. Let's look at traditional students for a moment because I think they're a really good typical case for us to examine. Every time I talk about why you need to go to college, at the Rotary clubs across Tennessee, all of whom serve bad roasted chicken of varying flavors, at these Rotary clubs, there is always one person who is dying to tell me, and they will have an accent very similar to many in the Commonwealth. They will stand up and say, not everybody needs to go to college, though. First thing you ask them is, did your kids go to college? They did. So they want somebody else's kids to not go to college. Check, got it. And then I ask them, what do you do if you don't go to college? And there's this mythical world of tradesmen. Well, they're all welders and electricians. Well, guys, in Tennessee, and I think in the Commonwealth as well, if you want to be a welder or an electrician, you got to go to technical college. You don't just show up and spark the torch, right? That's very dangerous. So even the jobs that people think you do if you don't go to college require college now. And so our data is clear. If you don't go to college, what are you doing in Tennessee? Well, you're making $10,000. Only 20% of you are making more than our minimum wage. Your median salary is about $18,000, which is fast food. That's where you are working. You might be working transient day labor type jobs. I worry sometimes in this conversation we always have the one apocryphal tale. I get it. They're out there. Yes, I know someone that didn't go to college, and they are a millionaire. As you all know, that is not the hinge on which public policy should pivot. The data is very clear. You must go to college, some form of post-secondary credential. This data, this is Tennessee data that I'll walk you through in a moment. When we first got this data set, this is a data set you check like 5 times because it tells a remarkable and appalling story. So we stratified our counties into 5 different groups according to high educational attainment, low educational attainment. And then we linked up their employment growth over the last decade, and we looked at what happened. And I really want you to focus on the 2 county sets on the left. During the most rapid pace of employment growth in American history, those counties actually lost jobs. And by the way, my high distress counties look exactly like Kentucky's. They are identical. They border each other in many cases. So think about this. If you had low attainment in your county, the most stratospheric boom in history couldn't change the fact that the people living in your county weren't doing that well, which takes it back to the moral piece in my mind. So we looked at that and we thought, we got to do something. And we probably have to do something really radical. I'll digress briefly to talk about Tennessee Promise, because there's no doubt that the approach we took with Tennessee Promise was foundational for Tennessee Reconnect. This is the first day we allowed high school seniors to apply for Tennessee Promise in 2014. We actually weren't sure it was going to work, by the way. I can say that now, because it has worked. The first day we allowed them to apply, these are seniors, high school seniors, lined up around Motlow State Community College in Middle Tennessee before 9 a.m. on a Saturday, mind you. We had teenagers actually awake and moving, and they were all applying for Tennessee Promise. The reason that happened, and the reason we have now accrued a 7% increase in college going in our state, that no other state that we can detect has ever had, 7%, is because we did something important with Tennessee Promise that was about the message. And something that our national critics of Tennessee Promise, of which there are several, fail to capture the fact. They say, well, now hold on, Tennessee Promise is a last dollar scholarship, so the most needy students aren't getting any money. And I say, that is true, they're not actually getting money, but their assumption is that needy students know what the Pell Grant is. And they don't know what the Pell Grant is. They know that their parents didn't go to college, and so they don't think they can go to college. And they say, well, you know, my family doesn't make much money, so I can't go to college, where we all know your family doesn't make much money, so you can definitely go to college. So cutting through that message with something like free, which is dramatic, is what we did long before any presidential candidates. For the record, this was 2014. And so that caused us to step back and say, if a dramatic reshaping of our financial aid message worked, couldn't that work for adults too? And the foundation that became Tennessee Reconnect was born. And I think that when you look within this mission statement, there's a couple different pieces that I'm going to dive into, but I am going to start with tuition free. And this is not at all a criticism of Kentucky's suite of financial aid. It's a criticism of every piece of financial aid in America that was a financial aid structure designed by financial aid people. And if you're not saying free, you're relying on people to be information-seeking, discerning financial aid experts and to fill out the worst form ever, the FAFSA. We lost 30 questions, and it's like we need to lose about 70 more. Because if you were going to design something to prevent people from going to college, you would do the FAFSA. It fits the bill. And so tuition free, that statement still matters. And there are a lot of states. My colleague in Missouri. Missouri has Tennessee Reconnect, guys. It's the same scholarship. They call it something incredibly complex. And so no, their participation rates don't look like ours. So the first realization is that our current financial aid messages are ineffective. And we've got really good data for the last 50 years that show that, right? And that our most low-income students need that bridge message to compel them to see what's out there. I'd also say when people focus on a last dollar scholarship and say, yeah, but the most low-income aren't getting anything, they also miss there are plenty of lower middle-income people that are getting something. And that a $2,200 Pell Award in Tennessee, which is still a low-income family, means you've got to make up $2,300, and that might as well be $1 million. So when we started with Reconnect, we started with a financial aid program that's very simple. You apply, which we'll talk a little bit about why that's important in a moment. You receive a last dollar scholarship after filling out the FAFSA. We do not currently have a SAP requirement. So that bad year you had 12 years ago, we get it. Come on with your 1.8 cumulative, because we think you'll earn your way back in, and they are. We require you to take 2 classes. 9 hours, too much. 1 class, 3 hours, dabbling. We need you to take 6 hours. And if you do that, at the beginning of the semester, we're going to pay whatever your balance is for tuition and mandatory fees. The big question that comes up here, do you pay for books? Do you pay for supportive costs? We don't. I wish we could. We have to work within, as you all know, we're not the federal government. We have to actually pay our bills. And so as a result, state government policy is typically built on a base of the possible. And for us, the possible is covering tuition and fees. But I want to say the other costs, I think we've got some pretty good approaches on. So our messages are ineffective. And here's proof, right? Because half of our adult learners right now are full Pell. Yet when we surveyed our adult learners, 69% said, what am I most worried about? I'm most worried about paying for this thing. But you know, about half of that group was going to get it paid for to begin with the Pell Grant. So until we ameliorate some of these hurdles that adult learners create for themselves, they're probably going to count themselves out. I know that because I counted myself out. And I re-enlisted in the Army for another hitch because I wasn't sure I could make it in college. I didn't even know how the GI Bill worked, even though I was entitled. It took really being pushed to say, you can go to college. There's a college, Austin Peay, very close to Kentucky, that has a bevy of former military, and you're going to do great. I had to have somebody push me. Not everybody has that. And so the hope is that message pushes Tennesseans. Financial aid absolutely does not matter without outreach. And that is where Jessica and her team come in. Many states have a comparable program to Reconnect. And I like to say those programs are mostly faith-based initiatives because they create them and then hope people come, which is not an actual strategy. You have to go find people. You have to go find them where they live. And most of all, in the current environment, our battle space is the internet, which means you have to do search engine optimization. And if as a state and as a college you haven't done that, you're losing. And you're losing to DeVry. And you're losing to Phoenix because they do search engine optimization. And this morning I Googled Go Back to College Kentucky, and you should do that too because all the results are for-profits. You got to own your battle space. We do. Go Google Go Back to College Tennessee. It's all Tennessee Reconnect. Don't get me wrong. There's some ads at the top. But you only need like one scroll when you get to ours. You're not getting anybody on the second search result, right? This website matters. And so when we said, we think we've got a great product, but we're not going to just rely on people to naturally come to it, we went after them. And the first thing we went after them was to win the Google war. This website matters because it was not designed by people that design financial aid. Those are not the same competencies, right? You probably need a marketing firm to help you. And by the way, that's the whole website, guys. There is no keep scrolling. That's it. And as soon as you click on one of those, you're moved to a pathway. And if you apply at the top of the page, Jessica did this awesome thing. We need to know a few things about you. We need to know like where you live. Do not need to know your social, for the record. PII is dangerous. But we need to know, have you ever gone to college before? We need to know, what are you most worried about? Because then we get that data, we know how to approach the student, and we also get some really good aggregate data. This was the first step, was getting out there. We also spent some money, we went on TV. We did. You got to go on TV. The other folks are on TV. And so we got out there with some really good ads you should go look at on YouTube. And they were good stories that helped adults see themselves in higher education. We also waged a ground campaign. And we're very fortunate. So in Tennessee, THEC, the agency I lead, is also Kia. So it would be like CPE and Kia being one agency. That's powerful. You should do that one day. Because having financial aid with the SHIO agency matters, guys. Because I've got a ton of staff, and you know what their job is? This. And that's Jason, and that's Eric on the right. And their mission is to go places where prospects may be. And with adult learners, that has us some really interesting places. The best thing I've ever seen in this program so far was when Jessica traveled the state and she trained every single SNAP benefit counselor in Tennessee on Reconnect. Can you imagine what it must be like to be a counselor for SNAP benefits every day? You're working with people who are having a hard time and they need help. They need help getting food, right? And we want to help them. But how cool is it if you're a SNAP benefit counselor to be able to say, hey, we're going to help you because you need help. But we might be able to help you move into another place in life and never need SNAP benefits again. You may never need food stamps again. Every single counselor in the state has been trained by Jessica on Reconnect. That is how you do outreach for an adult learner program, in my opinion. We realized also if we do financial aid the way we've always done it, it will have the exact same result we've always had, which is the highly motivated people who have few speed bumps in life will succeed. Like, they succeed now, right? But the ones that need the extra help, that need the wraparound, we've already established we're going to give you a great financial aid suite. We're going to go find you and bring you to college. And then once we bring you to college, Lord willing, college will look different than it did maybe when you went before. And it definitely isn't going to look like the college that the dude in the sweater went to on my first slide, right? So each of these spots around the great state of Tennessee, those are field offices, guys. We have Tennessee Reconnect field offices everywhere you see. We call it Navigate Reconnect. It's a self-evident title. And the people that do these jobs that work for Jessica, they're caseworkers. And one day they're helping somebody who is transitioning from incarceration. To my knowledge, we are the only state in America where the higher education agency has 5 full-time employees. All they do is work in facilities. Their job is to help justice-connected individuals transition. So all these outposts around the state, if you're transitioning from a justice situation, we can help you. If you're just an adult that wants to go back, we'll help you with your FAFSA. We'll help you register for classes. If you are in that one mortar board up there close to Montgomery County, Tennessee, which is near Fort Campbell, we're going to help veterans transitioning. So what we've really done is we've created a conduit for adult learners to ask the 2 or 3 fatal questions that I think could result in adult learners saying, I'm not doing that. Getting them past that next question. Hey, I'm really worried about paying for books. Well, you're probably eligible for a WIOA grant for supportive costs. Let's help you do that. Hey, I've got a flat tire. Also, see WIOA or your school's emergency grant. But we don't make that student call the school. We call the school. And those in CPE know the SHIO agency calling the campus has a kinetic effect often. And so we're able to get that student some help. The financial aid matters. I love it. This is what really matters, is having a net for these adults. So what's happened so far? Because I've been selling pretty hard, right? I need some results. In our first year, 18,000 people enrolled. We thought 8,000 would enroll, by the way. 18,217 enrolled. Let's focus on that 2153 number for a moment, because it is the coolest. These students have been in college for 2 semesters, and 2,000 graduated in 2 semesters. Think about that for a moment. It proves the theorem that adult learners don't need all the help. They just need a little help on the front end to show them they can do it. 2,000 graduated the first 2 semesters. And if ever I was worried about us exceeding the budgeted amount, which we did slightly by $15 million, what I would say is 2,000 of them graduated. This is the right investment. Look at that success rate. Our community colleges in the room, I think you know, we'll take 62%, right? 62% is a good day's work. We're not content. We're going to keep pushing. I think it's going to continue to go up. But that's pretty radical. And then a word about the campus perspective on this. If you're a campus in Tennessee, we are 100% performance-based funding. We don't fund based on enrollment. If you fund based on enrollment, you're going to get really good at enrolling people. We fund based on success. Campuses have an incredible incentive in our state to move that success number. And so they've gone over and above. Our presidents should get incredible kudos. They've done things we haven't even thought about for their adult learners. And as a result, their enrollment of adult students in the middle of a huge jobs market went up 18%. 18% in 12 months. So think about that. A lot of states right now are like, man, our enrollment's dropping. All the adults are going to work right now. They don't want to go to college. The right message will compel them, because it did in Tennessee. And year over year, you increase 18%. That's real progress. So what's next for us? We're going to refine our work with the incarcerated, because I think it's one of the single most important things we can do. We're going to keep pushing. We're going to make sure that our Navigate Reconnect staff, Jessica's constantly training them. You're constantly getting new skills that help you. We run a call center, by the way, and we have a person in our call center. All they do is talk to adult students. Why? Because talking to an adult student is fundamentally different than talking to an 18-year-old who's locked out of their FSA account, correct? So the person in your call center that talks to adult learners should probably be used to talking to adult learners. We are going to keep working now, I think, on making sure this is an equity imperative in my mind. We need to make sure that our Tennessee Reconnect class every year reflects the diversity of the state. And most importantly, we need to make sure that our grad rates reflect the diversity of the state. And we've got to push on that. And that doesn't happen accidentally, and it definitely doesn't happen by talking around the subject. You have to be very specific. We are failing students of color at many of our campuses. We have to do better. And then we have to find the right intervention. We need to put everybody on a bus to Georgia State University, and we need to replicate exactly what they're doing, because they figured out how to do this. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. And I've never been prouder than one of our universities, the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. They've been under the radar, but guys, their success rate with students of color is creeping up on Georgia State's, because they figured out some really important things and interventions that we must be doing. And the main thing that I hope this results in for all of our reconnectors is a great job. Thinking about advising matters. We need to help students find an academic pathway that both works for them, but also leads somewhere. I am not a liberal arts hater. I'm for it, right? Great employment outcomes. Love it. But we need to find a way for students to not just be thinking about interest, but also aptitude. And I'm not a psychometrician, but I will tell you there's some instruments out there that do that better than others that excite me. One of them is called U-Science, if you are familiar. I'm interested in a lot of things that I am not good at. I am very interested in college football. I am not good at college football. We've had students, you guys know your nursing classes at your community colleges. You know what happens, right? 300 show up. How many seats do you have for nursing? Maybe 50? And you ask the students that didn't make it in the nursing, why didn't you make it in? They say, I wasn't real good at biology. I hate science. You should be good at science to be a nurse. That student was interested in nursing. It's very different than their aptitude. And so as we refine what we're doing moving forward with adult learners, I really hope we'll push on helping them find something they have an aptitude for, and yes, of course, that they're interested in as well. Because where this ultimately leads for our state, we hope, is winning the daily dogfight of economic development. And there's no doubt that's an imperative in my mind. The good news, I can give this speech here because we are not generally competing for the same jobs. I would not give this speech in 4 other southern states that we compete with heavily because I wouldn't want to give away proprietary secrets. But our goal is to make sure reconnectors don't just reconnect with college. They change their occupational outcome. They make a different salary than the one I showed you at the beginning. And the most powerful multiplier here, just so you know, are reconnectors talking with other reconnectors. And that's what I'm excited about in about 12 months. Because in about 12 months, we're going to have thousands. We already have 2,000 Reconnect graduates. And I think that as we struggle with how public policy moves the needle, there is nothing more powerful than a community and somebody in a community that's done it and somebody that says, hey, I can help you do it too. So that is the story that I close with, except to say, here are the stakes if you don't do this. You see what I'm saying here, guys? Nobody was sitting in the Woolworth boardroom in 1970 saying, man, we're probably going to be bankrupt pretty soon. They thought they were on top of the world, right? Kmart, W.T. Grant. These companies don't exist anymore. I don't want to be a harbinger of doom, but you guys know what's happening with the birth rate thing. It's real. Your freshman class in 25-26 is going to be something you've never seen before. Serving adult learners is imperative for our sector's relevance. And I really like what our CPE colleague referenced a moment ago. We should be terrified that Amazon spent $700 million to do our jobs. Amazon took a look at what we offer and said, we can do it better with our $700 million. And I can promise you what Amazon is unconcerned with. Amazon is unconcerned with the fact your student information system, Banner, will only allow a fall start. We can't let Banner dictate. Banner is not a sentient being. We can't let a student information system dictate what we do for students, and we have. I have. Tennessee has. Please know that. We are guilty too. But I hope we see this, and the next time we're in a meeting about adult learners that is hard, because there are hard adult learner meetings, I hope we'll remember there could have been some hard meetings at Woolworths, and maybe they would be the new Amazon. But they didn't have the hard meeting, and so now they are bankrupt. And I will tell you, I think it's that serious. And I think you've got to be willing. Raise your hand if you're on a campus right now. I hope you will talk about serving adult learners 2% as much as you talk about capital projects. We are obsessed with buildings in higher education, and I don't know why. I hope next time you're in a capital outlay meeting at the leadership level, you'll say, yeah, we need some buildings. I get it. Let's talk about adult learners. Higher education's priorities have to change dramatically because the situation's dramatic. And we need to keep this in mind because this is very real. And on that uplifting note, let me call Jessica up as well, please, because I think she'll be able to field questions. But we have time for questions, I believe. We do? Come on up, Jessica, and then let's take questions. I think the best part of this stuff is, thank you. The best part of these things are typically the discussion. So, questions, thoughts? Yes, ma'am. Go out there, and I'll be with you. No, for
I
you.
didn't really need this, but I work for Hopkinsville Community College, the Fort Campbell campus. We have an awesome partnership with Austin Peay State University, so we appreciate that. But what are the regulations for the Reconnect program with felons who don't maybe qualify anymore for financial aid?
So, you don't hear me, is this on?
It is not on. It's about to be on. It's on.
It's on, all right. So, the only restrictions related to felonies are the same restrictions you have for federal aid. So if you have the drug conviction while getting Title IV funding, but otherwise, and this is where we're actually exploring this right now as we're going into prisons and we're talking to folks that are about to be released, and there's a misconception that, well, I'm not going to qualify for the grant. And we have to say, actually, you will if you meet these other eligibility requirements. So, yeah.
I don't think I do it. But I have a follow-up question, sorry, unrelated actually, but what about residency requirements for the adult? I know the high school, but the reconnect.
12 months prior. Yeah, we're not interested in inter-border crossings to participate in our programs. We need you to live in Tennessee, but and have lived there for 12 months. But absolutely, once you move there in 12 months and 1 day, you would be eligible. What else? Yes, ma'am. Lee?
Can you guys talk a little bit about, you mentioned, Mike, the need to sort of rethink how we do business in the classroom, how we deliver programs to make it more adult-friendly, and, you know, that we're a bit imprisoned by our own systems. Can you talk a little bit about some successes you've had in Tennessee, examples where you've really seen campuses sort of break through that mold?
Sure. So just some examples. Some of the examples actually happened prior to someone enrolling. When we talk about academic preparedness, for example, we have several colleges that once someone enrolled or applied for the Reconnect grant, they start up boot camps, technology boot camps, writing boot camps, math boot camps. So they're free for that adult learner. They're doing it in the summer before they're enrolling. And so there's an open door, softer landing once they actually enroll in their classes. This is something that they're doing. We also have campuses that are open on weekends and after 4 o'clock. And this includes financial aid offices, student success services, that sort of thing, because we are, of course, needing to think about the students that we're serving, and they're probably not available through the hours of 9 and 4, Monday through Thursday. So there's a lot of that going on. Hybrid classes as well. That's something that people are working on. That would be part of the time in the classroom, part of the time online or remote as well. But
I think the one of the really good things we did early on is, nothing gets done unless it's somebody's job. And so we asked every campus to designate a Reconnect lead. And that person, because to your point, systems are complex, and I didn't mean to besmirch them earlier. You've got a registrar, you got a financial aid office, you got an admissions office. All of those pieces have to work together. And on our best day in higher ed, they do sometimes. But on the days that they don't, it's really helpful to have somebody who, I am the Reconnect lead. We're going to have to make some systems talk to each other. And where Reconnect has worked best, I think they had a strong Reconnect lead. I'll be very honest, I think that Reconnect has not been uniform in implementation. Certain colleges in Tennessee have surged, others haven't. We're going to learn from that and try to make sure there's a common denominator of success. But the ones that have surged, I think, had somebody who cared and who could get things done.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit about your statewide policy on PLA and specifically with military?
Yeah, I'm going to lead in, and then Jessica's going to go because this is her baby. PLA, prior learning assessment, bringing in prior credit, I have found is a policy topic that is dominated by a ghost story called SACS. And faculty members sometimes are like, I don't think SACS will let me do it. And if y'all know Bell's like, I don't care, do it right. But SACS is not our roadblock here. And SACS has been made into a little bit of a roadblock that I don't think is fair to SACS. So what we did, and I'll use the military example, but I don't want to dwell on it because PLA is for every student, not just for veterans. But what we did with the military is first we came up with a canon of the 25 most populated military occupational specialties. We locked a bunch of faculty in a room because the faculty should absolutely drive this. I believe that. There's only one way through our academic curriculum in higher education, that's through faculty, and I buy into that. So we got faculty in a room with the curriculum for the Navy nuclear reactor operator course, and they did the crosswalk. And helpfully, those of you that are familiar, the American Council on Education has done most of the work for us. So for the faculty that were skeptical, and I know you're shocked to hear there can be faculty skepticism, we brought in ACE to walk them through what they do. And if you haven't heard that, you need to. ACE goes to the military school for months. They sit in the classes. So when you go look at that ACE military credit guide, this is not a casual linkage. So once we populated those 25, we said, this is what you're going to get in these 25 jobs, Air Force, not Air Force, they have their own community college, Navy, Marine Corps, Army, at every college in the state. We don't need to litigate whether or not the military police soldier needs to take criminal justice 101. They don't. ACE said so. We validated that, though, with our faculty. Our faculty didn't take every recommendation, nor should they have, because they need to kind of have that purview. But the result is, go look at our website, which is, I believe, the best in the nation. Minnesota's is close, called the Tennessee SOP platform, which is a military term. In the military, it means standardized operating procedure. In this context, it means service members opportunity portal. And you can put in any military job, and you will see right then every bit of credit you will get at any college in the state. We're not near done. We need to keep adding credit awards. We need to keep adding jobs. What that then did, though, is I think set up the right conversation. And I want Jessica to talk about PLA broadly, because I think the campuses drove the work.
yes, so in 2012, we actually convened representatives from all of our state institutions and some private not-for-profits, and developed a statewide plan, statewide recommendations. We are a higher ed coordinating board. We cannot tell an institution what they can and cannot accept. But together we came up with, and the institutions did lead this, basically guidelines for how we can accept quality prior learning assessment credit. And everyone in that room was very supportive of the transferability of those credits. And the need to find opportunities for adults to get these credits to prove that they've achieved this learning at a college level. Now, I will say we've had some governance changes since that time period, and we're going to reconvene that task force because we feel that there's another opportunity to sort of coalesce around messaging in a real direct way, an intentional way to adults, so that we can actually provide those opportunities up front and not have them try to find them in the institution, try to figure out what they're called at the institution so that we can market it, we can brand it, we can message it, and it's something that comes up front with an adult's package of opportunities. That's what
And
we'd like
we're
to
not
do.
there. We
We
got
are
to get
not
there.
there. Yeah.
What else? Yes.
Hi, good morning. I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Pikeville with a team here from UPike. We're in Eastern Kentucky, and of course, as Dean of College of Arts and Sciences, I have to believe there's a place for arts and sciences education, which right now is traditionally, so-called traditional students, largely face-to-face, largely 15-week semesters, seat time, all of that you had in your slide.
Yeah.
And Skippy right there.
Yeah. He's your guy.
Eastern Kentucky is also in a transition from coal to looking at other entrepreneurial. There's a lot of energy around planning for the future. Chambers are very involved. We have a lot of discussions and institutes. And I guess my question is, our mission is to serve the region, but what happens when the region is still trying to figure out its economy and the workforce is very much in flux? Maybe even without being a College of Arts and Sciences, that's hard, but I think it's especially hard to figure out where the partnerships are and what we might do as first steps.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm struck by is, and though I often at times criticize our sector of higher education, I'm equal parts an ardent fan, and I'm reminded a college can lead that region to where they need to go. And not everybody can do that. We had a great quote from one of our presidents. East Tennessee State University had some tragic losses this year, and 2 of the senior staff members who passed away had their funerals on campus. And I had the president said something that stuck with me, which was, no one has their funeral at a business. Our campuses are different than the normal enterprise. And so if your region's in flux, and we've seen this a little bit, we've seen it in rural West Tennessee, you all can put the stake in the ground to some extent, at a minimum as a convener, because my sense is any college that calls a meeting of its local chamber and their chairman, people are going to come, right? Because the college is an economic engine. And then you all, I think, have the opportunity to look ahead. Everything you named about arts and sciences, I love, except for 3 of the 4. Arts and sciences is important. 16-week semesters have to change, seat time has to change, and traditional students have to change, and that's the reality. But the arts and sciences, I mean, one, arts teach us how to think. Sciences are what we need. So if I were a dean of arts and sciences, I would think there's a huge place for you. Is a bachelor's degree a reach for some of these adults? No, because we don't need to feel like we're consigning adults to say, and this is a risk, right? We say, well, adult students, it's more of a technical credential thing. It could be, but I think we need to give them that full spectrum of options. And my point is, they're not even going to consider your option on a traditional semester with seat time and only other traditional students. So there's an opportunity, I think, for you all to create a cohort that would be different and teach the same exact liberal arts and sciences with fidelity, but delivered differently. I think you wouldn't have just traditional age students. What else?
Hi, Mike.
Hey, man.
Couldn't get away without asking at least one question. So, you guys have obviously built what I would define as a system of supports statewide. And so I'm having conversations on the Hill in Jefferson City with your counterpart, Zora Mulligan, about how do we move Missouri and in fact other states to build the same kind of system. So could you talk a little bit about sustainability of the funding model and also talk a little bit about the political will and political capital to make it happen, because we had an advantage in Tennessee with Governor Haslam,
Yep.
and it carried over to Governor Lee. So could you talk a little bit about that and how we could all benefit from that?
Great questions. First and foremost, you need Jessica Gibson. And I'm serious. In the early years of funding, it was not recurring money from the state, it was seed money. And all of you know that lead complex organizations, what I said a moment ago is true, and that is unless it's somebody's job, it's nobody's job. Jessica, again, to my knowledge, there was no other higher education coordinating board in America that had one person who was adult learners. And by the way, this was 2011, 12?
Yeah.
So, this was way before the adult, and Hadassah and Kathy know that. Way before the adult learner wave started, we had somebody whose only job was to think about how does this agency help coordinate better opportunities for adult learners. On the funding sustainability, Jessica and her team's results spoke for themselves the first couple years. Now the money's recurring in the state budget forever. We have a shop now of, how many do you have in the office?
Oh, in the office, we have 4, including myself, and then out in the field, we have 4 regional directors, 12 Reconnect navigators, and now 4 reentry navigators.
So you think about that, that's the size of most higher education coordinating board staffs, period. That's just our adult learner shop. And I think that the results beget buy-in. So talk about gubernatorial transition. We were fortunate with Governor Haslam. I think he was America's higher education governor. I don't think that's debatable. I will tell you, I think we got another one. Governor Lee, in fact, is the one that has pushed us to serve the incarcerated. He is the one that has pushed us to be partnered, I think, really deeply with the Department of Human Services. So part of it is, and I'm just going to tell you, Tennessee has a history of electing pragmatists. We just do. And I don't know why that is, but when you look at the people like Lamar Alexander, Phil Bredesen, Bill Haslam, now Bill Lee, we elect people that show up and want to govern. And their approach has been, I think, to start with the workforce and what do we need. And then what I've seen from both Governor Haslam and Governor Lee that's incredibly compelling is they both start with the question, who's hurting? Who in our state's hurting right now? How can we help them? And we're fortunate. One, we all believe that higher education is a great way to do that. We've now had 3 successive governors, because I think Phil Bredesen did the same thing, who when they ask the question, who's hurting, a big answer to helping them is higher education. But on the public policy front, for us, the most important thing is the slide I showed you with the results. And there's no doubt there were a couple years there where we were waiting to see how things work. At this point, I don't even worry about it a little bit, the sustainability. Our biggest challenge now is, I think we have the commercial where somebody sells 10 and they're happy, 100 they're thrilled, 10,000 and they're terrified. We have a lot of work now, and that we're going to think about how to sustain that. Our next level has to be not this agency. Nobody graduates from THEC. They graduate from campuses. And so figuring out the way for all the campuses to feel empowered, also to feel pushed. I think that's a very appropriate role for our agency, to keep pushing, but for all of our campuses to have resources too. And that's where we have tried a few different permutations of funding. We had a grant called Ready to Reconnect, where we gave campuses, I don't know, a couple $100,000.
It was, they were like 50,000.
So not a couple $100,000 at all, as you just heard, like 50,000. Small seed grants to see what works. I think that's our next big body of work, though, is to figure out how does the adult learner movement not be centrally driven, which almost never lasts, right? You have to have campus buy-in and leadership.
Can I add something to the sustainability piece? We realize that this is not just a higher ed initiative. Okay, we cannot just put all of this on, hey, colleges, guess what? You're going to graduate more adults. We are partnering very intentionally with other state agencies. So we trained 600 Department of Human Services staff. So that's SNAP and TANF and Child Care Certificate and Voc Rehab folks. We trained 250 American Job Center staff. We're actually doing another round of 500 American Job Center staff in the next couple of months. We'll be working with corrections. We worked with Tennessee Department of Transportation. We are working with state agencies as employers and as service providers to share this information. Tennessee Reconnect is now in DHS state plan. Department of Labor has written in Tennessee Reconnect into their state plan. So in terms of sustainability of the effort, I think you have to go outside of higher education to engage all of the people that will benefit from this increased educational attainment.
And all of that's free. Everything she just named is just about getting people in a room. Maybe you feed them some Panera, but generally, everything she just named is not resources. It's just been vision and time.
I appreciate your comments about the ACE credit for the military population. I want to kind of ask a focused question. Can you kind of I love your perspective. I almost did the wave when you some of your comments, but anyway. So I want to ask you to do this. Can you delineate for some of us the difference between, like you said, the ACE recommendation, American Council on Education recommendation versus college preparedness. The reason why I say that, a lot of people are saying, well, folks are coming, they're not ready, and I don't want to give them this credit because they're not ready, and they're using college readiness as a disqualifier of the ACE recommendation. So can you kind of delineate in your special way and everybody can get excited?
Yeah, I think you said it really well. I think the answer is yes to both. The ACE credit needs to be a critical indicator of learned intellectual capital. College preparedness is something a little bit different. I also think, when I think college preparedness, I instantly think that if you have got an adult learner in a college algebra-only pathway, that's a huge hurdle. I think we've made great progress, and CCA has really pushed us on this. So if you don't have a stats pathway, that'd be the first thing I look at, because college preparedness, here's what I've learned, guys. You know what college preparedness is when said in college admissions offices? I'm going to stop doing this now, but just kind of got in the habit. College preparedness is really a proxy for math preparedness. And come on, I got a really good degree from Austin Peay and only took like one math, and that was, at great peril. But I think we've allowed, there's some mathematicians in this room, they're going to be very unhappy with this, but I think we've allowed math to occupy an outsized space in the college preparedness discussion. Are there certain majors? Absolutely. I want the engineers to know math, for sure. But I think that if we were really talking about college preparedness, I welcome that. Because you know what that should be a discussion about? Do you know how to register for classes? Or are we just throwing you a schedule, which is what we're doing normally, right? We're hoping everybody suddenly understands the registrar's process, which is not a winning strategy. That is a college preparedness discussion we should have. But unless I'm wrong, most of the times I hear it talked about, it's about success in a remedial or a credit-bearing course, particularly math. Doesn't mean that reading and writing aren't significant, but that my own personal lens has been, we're talking about college preparedness, or are we talking about algebra, college algebra? And oftentimes it's been college algebra. If we were just talking about preparedness, we better talk about it, right? That's a great conversation. Then the conversation's, let's bring in the ACE credit, but you know what? We probably shouldn't just throw you to the wolves on the first day of the semester. Maybe we have a mandatory student orientation or something like that. And wouldn't it be great if the orientation were other adult learners? We do that. At our campuses that are doing well, they do that. Not all of them do it. That is the college preparedness discussion I want to have. Am I wrong? I want to hear your thoughts.
You're exactly right. And one thing I'll add, and I'll add to that. If you look at the pool of students when it comes to college, everybody, the military and the college starts at the same baseline. Graduate high school, go to college. Graduate high school, go to the military. So when did they not become college prepared? So I think it's a deeper conversation. Yes, there are some things they need to learn, but I would submit that the reason why ACE did this is because the military has given extra skills to help them be more prepared. We just need to have that conversation to work out some of the other things that they have missed if they weren't in school. So if you think about, I'm saying one more time, not the whole thing, I'm saying one more time. The same pool. Graduate high school, military, college. It's the same group of students, folks.
Wow.
So we got to really dig into what we mean by, can I use your college preparedness?
It's really, really good point. All right.
Mine is a relatively simple question. I'm with AARP, Executive Counseling. We've just started this journey. We've come on board with the Graduate Network. So when I come to a conference like this, I'm new to all of the terms. It's a pet peeve of mine, former school teacher, et cetera, et cetera. When I get into a situation like this, acronyms really throw me.
Oh, man. I did
So when you throw out PLA and I hear excitement in the room, I don't know what you're talking about. When you throw out SAX, I don't know what that means. I do know what ACE means because the gentleman before me said American Council of Education. So these acronyms are just throwing me for a loop, and maybe I'm the only one in the room, but please help me out with these things.
No, it's the most important perspective, because if they throw you for a loop, they throw anybody that doesn't work in higher education, and thus our students, for a loop. And so think about if you were talking about PLA, What's a way to tell a student, hey, come get your prior credit assessed? I actually don't know that that sentence gets them right. Would a better way be, do you have skills from a prior job? Let us see if that will translate to or translate those experiences. I think it's a great point. We're an insular world with our own vernacular, and I think with adult learners especially, that's what I love about Jessica's website. That website is not written by higher educators. It is written by Jessica and a marketing firm that just talked plain language. It's a great point.
Hey, good morning. I just wanted to let you know this is completely refreshing for me. I'm the Deputy Director for Army Continuing Education, and to hear these conversations about the American Council on Education and the Joint Services transcript, my office manages tuition assistance for the soldiers, for the Army. Nobody pick up and throw anything at me, but we own Go Army Ed. So if you're familiar with that system, that's what we manage. So the college preparedness and the JST, we're the service program manager for ACE for the Army. So I just want to let everyone know throughout today or the networking events, if you have questions about the Joint Services transcript, I happen to have a pamphlet right here. I wish I would have brought more. So I could speak for probably a long time, and I know we're probably up against the timeline. But the college preparedness piece for the soldier is the comebackers are in a continuous cycle through the soldier's life cycle, whether that's a comebacker as they get their degree or their credential while they're serving, or they wait till they transition out of the service. So to have this kind of conversation in this forum, and for the language and for the information to be put out about how do we solve the problem, because we have multi-million-dollar systems and $4,000 a year that soldiers can use to go to school, get their credential. However, we're seeing very low participation rates when they don't have the constraints of finances, they don't have the constraints of the opportunity to attend. The only constraint that normally is there for a soldier or a service member is the time associated and the reach back, because we have approximately 7,000 soldiers for every one counselor in the Army. So that continuous engagement and that reach back, needs to be a holistic approach of the community of education throughout the services and throughout the states and throughout the nation. So thanks.
Absolutely. I think we had some up front that I didn't want to miss. Yes, ma'am.
So you skirted around a little bit, or mentioned partnerships with 4 years. I know when.
Wait a second. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned a couple of times partnerships with the 4 years, and when Tennessee Promise first rolled out, I know that was some of the biggest pushback was from the 4 years. Can you talk a little bit about, is Tennessee Reconnect, is it only for the 2-year colleges?
Yeah, it is.
And so how have you navigated that, and how have students, have they used that to go on to 4 years, and how did it impact the 4 years?
So first and foremost, I think a broad statewide conversation about going to college helps every college, which was absolutely the case with Tennessee Promise. The fears when Tennessee Promise were launched, there would be some massive hemorrhage of students who were going to a university but instead went to a community college. In the main, didn't occur. We had 2 campuses, UT Martin and Tennessee Tech, where I think it did happen. Most of the state, look, the goal of Tennessee Promise is the same as Reconnect. I'm not trying to get the people already going. I'm trying to get the person that was never going. And so in that way, Promise, I think, allayed some of the fears. With Reconnect, there wasn't as much pushback because I don't think any of the universities are under an illusion. Our Reconnect population, not their population. I really hope it becomes their population. But when we launched Reconnect, I think the universities were supportive because they realized, first off, throughput could happen. And wouldn't it be the coolest thing ever if somebody counted themselves out of higher education, they started at a community college, and they ended with a doctorate, which will absolutely happen. I'm positive that will happen. But our universities, this is where, and I don't know the climate in Kentucky, students suffer when higher education fights on turf. Which campus is beside the other campus? Which campus got a building and the other one didn't? Those turf wars are never about students. They're about adults and egos. And so Tennessee has been fortunate that we don't have much of that. We've got a group of presidents that understand this is a collective enterprise, a massive enterprise, by the way. It's not like we're Massachusetts with 70% attainment, guys. The water's deep enough for everybody to swim in Tennessee, and I think it probably is here as well. But sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and we have great presidents. at every level. Community colleges, universities, both of our system presidents, we all had dinner together last Thursday. I'm aware that in some states that would have resulted in a physical altercation. And so that's the one I don't know that you can duplicate. We have presidents that get along, and we've avoided turf. There's another one up front, I thought.
I was just wondering, Jessica, you mentioned the writing, technology, and math boot camps. Who is running those and staffing them?
Those are actual college staff. Those are the folks at the college. Now, these are, as Mike said, there are some colleges that have stepped forward in a very intentional way. So they'll have an actual position that's funded as a reconnect contact at the institution. So we can then take the folks that our navigators are working with and do a nice warm handoff to that institution, and then that person can then guide those adults to all of the necessary next steps. And what they're seeing, the colleges that are doing this are seeing the need, and they're seeing that their college's success rates, the fact that we're funded on outcomes, depends on the success of our students. And if we can help promote the success of our students, then we as an institution are going to do better, and actually we're going to probably get more money in the funding formula. So there is a value placed on student service, and student service is understanding the needs of the students and therefore putting the resources behind it. So these are actually faculty and staff that are working to provide these boot camps to the students at each institution. Yes.
Yeah. We've got time for about 2 more. Or we're going to wrap up and take a break, it sounds like. Any others? Over here? Yeah, 2 over here.
We've talked a lot about ACE and military, but they also have a civilian side, credit, which we need to look at also, because institutions like Dollar General, which are in just about every community in both the Commonwealth and the state of Kentucky, ACE did an evaluation of the store manager training that they do and recognized 9 credit hours. Well, right there is shooting fish in a barrel. You know, you go out and you reach those store managers and complete that degree. Google IT had theirs evaluated, 12 hours in cyber security training. So look at the civilian side also. They've done some of that. It's also a quick way to benchmark of how prior learning can be done for your own institution. So there you go.
That's a great point.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to ask real quick, with the rapid immigration growth that we're seeing, if you're seeing for people that have advanced degrees from their home countries, is there space at this level to help them, or do they need to somehow bypass this and we need to figure out more at the 4-year level?
To be honest, haven't thought about that a lot. Our rapid immigration in Tennessee hasn't been as rapid as other states. And those coming in our country with advanced degrees already, I assume, is kind of the population you're focused on. You know, first and foremost with Tennessee Reconnect, you have to be able to complete a FAFSA. So you have to be a U.S. citizen or a legal resident. And so that is not a conversation we have had at any great depth. I'm honest about our shortcomings. I don't know that we're there in that space. Guys, thank you for your time. Again, I'm grateful for Kentucky as a partner, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.